Welcome to Is This a Thing? I am your host for the evening, Susie Kahn Weinberg. Um, Damien, am I in the spotlight? I think I need to be. Anyway, um, I think I'm good. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Very, very excited to have you here. Sorry for the wait. Weren't sure if we were having technical difficulties or not, but we're moving ahead, and we're really, really glad that you could all be with us tonight. This is This a Thing? It's our June show. Our theme is merry-go-round. For those of you who are new to our show, this is our 7th year running. We are a storytelling show and we feature true personal narratives. I am one of 3 co-producers along with Jake Cowan and Damien Reshevsky, who is behind the scenes at this very minute, making sure the storytellers and I will be seen and heard tonight. So everybody, let's wave to Damien and Jake. So this is our 2nd Zoom show. We can't wait to be back at our true home, O'Shaughnessy's. It's an awesome Irish bar here in Chicago on the north side. Things are opening up right now. It's starting. It's crazy though how Zoom sort of feels normal and comfortable. This weekend, my family had some friends over for dinner and we sat outside. There was Purell, Clorox wipes at the ready. I could barely remember how to speak to someone in person, let alone how to get dressed, but it's happening and it's the new normal we've all been anticipating. So we'll all get used to it together. And let me just say that 2020 is turning out to be you never believe this if you saw this in a movie kind of year. We got some things to say about all that's happening, but I'd like to kick off tonight with a piece I wrote inspired by our theme, merry-go-round. I wrote this a while ago. What's interesting is our theme was set back in January. And this is the 2nd time that this has happened, that we've been sort of like horrible, helpless fortune tellers. Because merry-go-round, we definitely feel like we're on that. At least that's a common metaphor people have been using. In April, our theme was Wish You Were Here. And that was just when we were learning that our separation was going to be a little longer than first anticipated. So I don't know, we clearly have a vision of the future that we'll see. I wish I could remember what the July theme is. Maybe that'll tell us something. All right, so I'm just going to kick this off with my story, aptly named Merry-Go-Round. When I was little, I used to mix up the merry-go-round, which I loved, with the Ferris wheel, which I feared. The merry-go-round was safe and low to the ground. Looking up at the Ferris wheel, all I saw were feet dangling precariously and a guarantee of getting stuck at the top, and that was terrifying. I'd get confused which ride my family was heading for. If my dad said, let's go on the carousel, I was never able to remember if that was a second name for the pretty horsey ride or the we may never come back down ride. We used to go to Kiddieland a lot when I was growing up in Chicago. What was just a big semi-permanent carnival with questionably safe rides was Disney World to us as kids. Kiddieland, for those of you who don't know, was just behind what was once Lincoln Village Theater at the border of Chicago and Lincolnwood. Northsiders flocked on weekends. Every other child's birthday party was celebrated there, made evident by the cake-induced shrieking and rampant roughhousing, the pointed paper hats with the too tight elastic chin strap, the heartfelt crying and demands to be taken home, and the post-roller coaster hot dog-induced vomiting. And last but not least, the 1970s distracted parents, enviably oblivious to it all. I loved and hated going to Kiddieland. I loved it because I was supposed to, and because it meant I'd be there with my best friend Meredith or with my 2 big brothers who I just couldn't get enough of when I was a little girl. They all seemed to love it very much. The rides, the food, the carnival games, the chaos. I mostly faked loving it, but also was terrible at faking it, as more than on one occasion, a ride had to be stopped to let me off to quiet my hysterical screaming. I recall this happening on the bumper cars once as I obsessed over the word whiplash as described to me by my brother. I didn't want my head to fall off. My reliably recurring childhood fever dream as a kid was most definitely inspired by the Kiddieland Funhouse. For me, that was a house of terror. The image that haunted my subconscious when fighting an infection is actually featured in the movie Grease. It's the scene at the very end when Olivia Newton-John tries to be sexy in her hot pants and 4-inch spiked heels, and she and John Travolta sing "You're the One That I Want" while walking across the undulating floor beneath them. If you look carefully, there are moments when Olivia looks terrified. That moving, shaking, unpredictable, you may just fall through the cracks and never be seen again walkway was my fever-induced nightmare path from my bedroom to my parents'. In my dream, it morphed into an endless hallway, preventing me from getting to my mom to let her know I was ill and needed the chewable children's aspirin that was way too tasty to be medicine. No wonder when I became a mom myself, I left those baby monitors working well past the baby years, so my kids would never have to walk a treacherous hallway as I did. The merry-go-round at Kiddieland was my go-to ride. For me, it was aptly named. Safe, predictable, moving in a slow circle, allowing you to take in everything around you from a secure spot. You could be on a journey on the back of a beautiful horse, going forward and up and down, unless you were unlucky and ended up on one of those boring stationary ones. And you could feel like you were traveling far away. And just when that may start to feel scary, around the turn, there was your mom, waving, elbowing your dad to snap a photo before you disappeared again, only to return to their smiling faces and waiting arms for a much needed hug. As I got older and stopped getting car sick all the time, I learned to enjoy the other rides, even roller coasters. And we can attribute that to both physical growth and a not unhealthy peer pressure to take a risk and live a little. So I'd love to say that I still like the merry-go-round, and that conjures up those warm, lovely feelings and memories. When I first took my oldest daughter on the merry-go-round, I remember she was pretty indifferent. I think my expectations were too high. What I didn't expect is that I would feel dizzy and sort of sick, one of the lasting conditions of post-pregnancy and childbirth. I can no longer walk, dance, drive, or apparently merry-go-round in a circle. Of course, that didn't stop us from many carousel rides through my kids' youth, but I'm not really sure any of us really enjoyed it. Today, I see it as a rite of passage for a kid to beg to go on the ride and then soon regret it. These last few months of COVID-induced isolation, I think it's 3 now, has been a return to the merry-go-round for me. I feel slightly sick to my stomach at the thought of how we got here. I keep seeing the same things over and over again. I'm occasionally bored and at times afraid. Sometimes it can lure me to feel almost at ease, going with the flow with all the ups and downs, and other times I feel stuck at a standstill. I'm not alone on this ride, we're all on it, and I think we can feel it starting to slow down, yet it will likely keep going, but just at a slower pace. I just want to know when it will come to a full stop to safely let us off, so for the first time in over 3 months, I can go hug my mom with all my might. Thank you. I have a peanut gallery clapping, but you just can't hear them. Thanks, everybody. We have 5 storytellers tonight in addition to me, so 6 altogether, but 5 more storytellers tonight, and I am super, super excited about all of them. First up is Danny Costanzo. Danny is a fundraiser for an education nonprofit by day and a creative writer by night. She is currently writing a young adult novel. And when she isn't writing, she loves exploring new Chicago neighborhoods, hiking and reading road trip novels not written by white men. I'm so glad Danny is with us tonight and that we have her at the top of our lineup. Please welcome Danny.
When I moved to Chicago, Before I knew how to make my commute from home to work without checking Google Maps, I knew where the good and the bad neighborhoods were. I accepted this information from friends, family, and the internet without questioning it. After all, I'm liberal. I've taken classes on racial and social justice. I'm bi and anti-capitalist. I work for a nonprofit that serves low-income communities of color. I've posted on social media with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, marched in peaceful protests with my white liberal friends, and gotten into heated arguments with relatives about institutional racism. I wasn't the problem. I can't point to a specific moment when it all changed, but in those rare Chicago moments when folks from all over the city congregate, the L Jazz Fest, or when yet another innocent Black man was murdered by CPD, I felt guilt low in my stomach. I knew it was wrong, but what was I doing to stop it? How could I support Black people and consider their neighborhoods bad? How could I stand for racial justice and fear a large section of the city? That wasn't solidarity. That was being passive, supporting the Black community from the comfort of my studio apartment on the Northwest Side, where I had the privilege to turn off the news and pretend nothing was happening. If I was going to change, and if the city was going to change, I knew that passive support from the comfort of my home wasn't enough. This January, I joined the group Walking Across Chicago, a group that walks entire streets, starting on the south or west sides, to dissuade folks from leaving once the route crosses into an unsafe neighborhood. The first walk I attended was King Drive, a 13-mile street that crosses through Pullman, Roseland, Chatham, Washington Park, and Bronzeville, neighborhoods I'd never seen and certainly never strolled through. I felt really scared to go. I was scared to offend the folks who lived in those neighborhoods and scared to put myself in danger. I almost backed out when we woke up at 6 a.m. to catch the train. I was careful not to dress too white, not to bring any valuables. Once my boyfriend and I were the only two white people on the bus, I felt my heartbeat start to accelerate, my palms start to sweat. I tried not to stare and not to look afraid. We didn't say a word until we had joined the rest of the group. Once we started walking, I felt my nerves start to calm. I'd expected to see gangs, hear gunshots, was wearing shoes I could run in just in case shit really went down. But it wasn't like that. The houses were smaller and there were many empty lots. On some blocks, every other house was boarded up. We passed a few soul food restaurants that smelled amazing, but we'd walk long stretches without seeing any restaurants, coffee shops, or bars. No one was playing in yards or walking down the streets. We saw giant, unoccupied mansions, the windows shuttered with boards and porches crumbling, and I imagined how glorious they must have looked. We definitely stood out, a group of 15 mostly white folks bundled head to toe in winter gear and hiking boots, but the few people we saw just stared silently as we passed by. When I arrived back at my apartment, I felt like I was returning home from a foreign city. I felt guilty for visibly relaxing, for having so many bars and restaurants and safe spaces, for not seeing a single person of color on my block. I felt guilty for having participated in so much dialogue about the bad, dangerous South and West sides. I'd gotten just a glimpse of how folks of color must feel being the only non-white person in the room, and I resolved to get to know neighborhoods and people before perpetuating that kind of conversation. I wanted to share this story to say that I don't know the right thing to do or say today. In honor of the Black Lives Matter protest this week and the unjust murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I wanted to use this space to start a conversation about how we, as white folks and storytellers, can use our voices to show solidarity and change racism. Live Lit gives us an opportunity to be vulnerable and to share a piece of our humanity with strangers. While I'm so grateful for the opportunity and for this community, I wanted to acknowledge that many of these storytelling shows take place in predominantly white, wealthy neighborhoods on the north side of Chicago, although there are certainly exceptions. I don't say this to make anyone feel guilty for being here today. I know I haven't done enough, but I want to be an ally, take action, and intentionally create genuine, respectful spaces that amplify Black and brown voices. I want to acknowledge and question my own prejudices. To educate myself and compile this list, I've referenced blogs and social media posts from Black activists and writers of color. I recognize that this is not a perfect or all-encompassing list, and that y'all have probably seen many of these suggestions on Facebook, but I don't think we can say it enough right now. Please feel free to share any thoughts and feedback. Number 1, Reflect on how you personally contribute to and benefit from white supremacy. Try sitting with those feelings of guilt and shame rather than justifying them. For example, as a white woman, I'm given the benefit of the doubt by cops when I attend protests or I'm pulled over for speeding, two privileges not afforded to folks of color. Number 2, listen more and talk less. White folks have had the microphone for a long time. It's important to listen to and amplify the voices of our Black and brown friends, rather than chiming in to demonstrate how woke we are or to interrupt a person of color with a quote from "So You Want to Talk About Race." Number 3, protest, but do so for the right reasons. Show up to demonstrate solidarity and stand between Black people and the police, not to get a photo for Facebook. Number 4, make Black friends, meet more Black folks. How do we do that? We can attend storytelling events in Black and brown neighborhoods, go to bars and restaurants on the South and West sides, learn how it feels to be the only white person in the room. Number 5, Black people are not responsible for educating us about racism. Let's do the work ourselves before we ask questions. Number 6, read books and consume media written by Black folks. And not just books about race. How many books by white men do you have on your bookshelf? How many books by women of color? I know my ratio is far from perfect. Number 7, understand the violence and oppression against Black folks in your city and find ways to fight it. We must think, what action can I take that will have a direct benefit to the Black community without any Black labor? Number 8, support Black-owned businesses. If you don't know of any, check out the website Support Black-Owned. Number 9, when in doubt about where to donate, give money to Black women, especially Black trans women. Number 10, lastly, we will try to be good allies, and sometimes we will fail. That's okay. When we mess up or get called out, let's not stop trying. Let's learn from our mistakes, listen, and actively educate ourselves on what not to do and how to be better. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you. I want people to feel comfortable to unmute, and we'd love to hear it. And for all of our storytellers coming up, and the chat, that's a great way to show us that you're actually out there. It's always so wonky not to hear you and see you. Although actually I can see you and you're all beautiful. It's the biggest Brady Bunch box I've seen in a long time. So I do want to just take this minute to thank Danny for wanting to share these words and how you did it, and to share your own truth and your own vulnerability. And that's what this is all about. So if you guys will indulge me, we couldn't do this show and not address what's happening and how we're all trying to process change. There are things we can and must do, and one of them is to be blunt and upfront about the state of our country and the way we play, the part we play in supporting Black Lives Matter movement. We have witnessed the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, David McAtee, Tony McDade, and countless other Black lives because of police brutality and the oppression of Black lives to the many other broken racist systems of our country. The ways we've all been complacent with the status quo perpetuate these systems, and we stand in solidarity with Black individuals and the Black community in Chicago and beyond. And with our Is This a Thing platform, as small as it may be, it is mighty, and we want to use it, and we will want to learn how to use it better. And as Danny said, sharing and hearing personal narratives provide a powerful experience, and they help to break down social and cultural barriers. True stories serve to connect individuals from different backgrounds to truly gain understanding of larger societal narratives, as well as the personal and individual experiences. And mainly, stories start a conversation. Is This a Thing is committed to finding, inviting, and including as many voices as we can from across the city. So, thank you for allowing me to share this and say this on behalf of our storytellers and Is This a Thing? We are going to post some links in the chat, and we can have some info for you later after the show as well, and on our Facebook page. And if there's things that people would like to share that links and things that, I don't want to start a dialogue in chat. I want everyone to be listening to stories, but if there's something you'd like to share with us, we would be grateful. All right. Now, I'm very excited to welcome an old friend of mine from my stand-up comedy days. Okay, that's a correction, from my stand-up comedy day. Shanna Strum. Shanna is a writer, performer, and recovering a sorority girl. She is also the creator of the sketch comedy web series Life of the Potty, and that is with an H. She is the host of Making an Artist podcast and writer of the blog The Compassionate Creative. When she isn't making art, she's helping others create their own through her creative coaching business. And you can find her at lifeofthepotty.com, and I will put that in the chat. Shanna, whenever you are ready.
Thank you. Also, thank you, Susie and Danny, for mentioning and bringing up links and anti-racist resources for Black Lives Matter. It was an early spring day just before Easter in 1999. I fastened a faux daisy into my short blonde hair, covered up my zits with a foundation 3 shades too dark, and fired up my 92 Ford Probe to head to school. I felt like hot shit with that Drew Barrymore-esque daisy, letting everyone know that I was delicate and quirky. I probably smoked a Marlboro Light on the way to school, or maybe I didn't. I don't remember because I had a really bad headache. And not the kind women got in sitcoms when they didn't want to boink their hubbies, but like a real one, a throbber. I went to the nurse who sent me home, and as soon as I pulled into the driveway, I ran into the house to vomit in the half bath off the living room. And no, I was not pregnant. This isn't that kind of story, because I wasn't that kind of girl, because literally no one would fuck me. I'd never barfed from a headache before, so my parents took me to the ER. The doctors essentially said, oh, she's a girl. Girls get migraines in association with their periods. Diddle-dee-doo. Here's some pain pills that'll make her feel like she's dying. $3,000, please. But the pain never went away. It was constant, throbbing behind my eyes and the back of my neck, like a dude harassing you for 10 blocks, except this didn't go away when I spit at it and yelled, fuck off. I took hot baths, kept trying the pills, another trip to the ER. They gave me a neurological exam, said I was fine. It was migraines, more pills. The headaches achieved rom-com leading man status, persistent and inappropriate because they believed we were meant to be together. Then on Good Friday, my eyes crossed, thus making it a very bad Friday indeed. Back to the ER we went. I vaguely remember the phrase brain tumor being floated around. I was loaded into an MRI and told to stay completely still for 20 minutes. I didn't. Instead, I barked on myself, thus rendering my MRI incomplete. I would have to wait until Monday for a neurologist to clarify if it was a migraine or a brain tumor. No big deal. So off I went back home to enjoy my Easter with a black eye patch over one eye so I could literally see straight. I was getting more fuckable by the minute. Jesus rose, and so did I. Off to the neurologist we went. Dr. Rohrbaugh started by giving me yet another neurological exam, which I was sure would yield absolutely nothing. And after he blasted his doctor flashlight into my eyeballs, he stepped back and he said, it's pseudotumor cerebri. Okay. Yeah, let's get you checked into the hospital. Well, alrighty. I sat in my hospital bed as a nurse brought me a tray of lunch that I could not eat. But there was a cute little orange double popsicle on there, and I decided to try my luck with that. And as I brought the twin pops to my mouth, they immediately fell apart and broke onto the tray. And so did I. I burst into sobs. I have a tumor. I'm going to die. My poor parents. My poor sister. No, she fucking hates me. She'll be fine. I am going to die. See, I was 16, a junior in high school, and even though I was spectacularly well read for a Missouri teen, I didn't know what the word pseudo meant. We hadn't had it yet in my AP English class, and the doctors had not thought to explain it to me. Seeing as I was just a young woman in pain, I was the last to know what had actually been causing it, because apparently I was a problem to be fixed, not discussed. Finally, I had an appointment with a nice lady ophthalmologist, and I asked her to kindly explain my cancer diagnosis to me. Shocked that no one had told me what the fuck was going on, she assured me that I did not have a brain tumor, just that the spinal fluid pressure that surrounded my brain had increased in pressure, causing intense headaches, and that it had finally gotten so bad that it pushed on my optic nerve, which had caused my eyes to cross. And luckily, they figured it out because I could have gone blind. All I had to do was get a spinal tap, a procedure where they stick a giant fucking needle into the base of your spine to suck out your spinal fluid and relieve the pressure on my brain. So I wasn't going to die, but I had to have a spinal tap instead. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. As I laid on an exam table waiting for Dr. Rohrbaugh to stab me in the spine with a giant fucking needle, I contemplated how hot the resident who said I could squeeze his hand when it hurt was. Well, my super great at diagnosing but needs a brush up on his lumbar skills, doctor had to make not one, not two, not three, but 4 attempts before finally hitting my spinal fluid sac. The resident's hand had turned red by the time Dr. Rohrbaugh extracted my pressurized spinal fluid and proclaimed, that doesn't usually happen. You've humbled me. And my 16-year-old, lying in the fetal position, crying over spilt popsicle sticks, never had a dick in her life, says, I have that effect on most men. My headaches went away and I got to take off the eye patch. But just like the third act of a rom-com, those persistent little fuckers came back. I had another tap, and Dr. Rohrbaugh must have went home and practiced on some oranges because he got it right on the first shot. And it was around this time that I was with it enough to understand what had given me this pseudo tumor. Zits. Remember when I said no one would fuck me? Well, it wasn't just my loud personality that was the problem. I had some items on my face, my chest, my back to contend with. And in order to become more pleasing to the teen boy eye, I had begun taking tetracycline to clear up my acne. Again, I was a problem to be fixed, not discussed. So I popped my pills in hopes I would become prettier and less of a visual burden, and it is not lost on me that my pursuit to become more pleasing to those around me forced me to become completely reliant on them instead. It's almost 20 years later, and I'm still sitting with why this happened. One thing I learned is that if you are a woman in this world, your pain is not heeded. I cannot count on my fingers and toes how many stories that start with, they told her it wasn't anything to worry about. And God help you if you are a woman of color or Black. Just ask Serena Williams, who had to beg doctors to listen to her when she was having a pulmonary embolism. She's alive today thanks only to herself. I learned not to let anyone, no matter how educated or rich or experienced, tell me that my pain isn't real or not bad enough. Despite what any doctor or lawyer or politician would have you think, I am the resident expert of my body. Thank you.
Oh. Yes, Shanna. Oh my God. Shanna, that was great. So many amazing lines. Jesus has rose and so did I. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think I was looking at your parents the whole time while you were talking. That was fun. You guys will have a good conversation later. All right. Next up is Patrick Curtin. Patrick is a Chicago native, now living in the city's northwest side of Portage Park. Patrick is a self-proclaimed overachiever, having shared stories in many places, too many to list, but I will share with you a few. At the Irish American Heritage Center, Steppenwolf, Second City, This Much Is True, Outspoken, and The Moth, and many others around town. He incorporates storytelling as a celebrant for weddings, memorials, and other moments in life that should be celebrated. That sounds incredible, Patrick. Patrick, when you are ready, please share with us.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. May 1971. I'm 22 years old and waiting for my physical to join the Army. I furtively glance around the room at other young men that are stripped to their underwear, jockeys and boxer shorts and briefs. Oh my. Beads of sweat begin to pool at the base of our backs despite the fan's whirring blades oscillating and blowing. We stand in a row and a man approaches carrying a clipboard, stethoscope, and rubber gloves. Pull down your underpants. Left, right. Turn around, bend over, and spread. The tapping of the pencil on the clipboard penetrates the silence. How did I get myself into this position? I want to serve my country, but I oppose the Vietnam War. My student deferment morphed into a teaching deferment, but in January of 1971, that all went away when they replaced the deferments with a lottery based on your birthday, and the lower the number, the quicker you got called. My number at 87 meant I had a couple of months to figure out what to do. I figured I had three options. I could seek asylum in Canada. I could get a homosexual deferment, or I could join the Army. There was a network of people supporting draft age men who did not want to fight in the Vietnam War to seek asylum in Canada. I was troubled in the nightly news of all the civilian casualties that I saw in Vietnam. But that seemed like an overwhelming thing to move to Canada. I really loved Chicago and didn't want to leave everything that was familiar to me. Now, unbeknownst to my family and friends, I had recently been exploring attraction to other guys. But if I get a homosexual deferment, will my school district find out and will I get fired? I love teaching and I worked really hard to get this job. If I joined the Army, would my fellow soldiers sense my true nature and bully me, or worse? And what if I get a dishonorable discharge due to my budding sexuality? And what would that do to my job prospects? One of my coworkers knows a lawyer who is also a draft counselor. So I scraped together $500 for the fee, and that represents about 3 weeks of my teaching salary. I knock about all the different options, and he mentions that if I do want to go for the homosexual deferment, that I'll need to get a letter from a psychologist. I press him about the dangers of who would know this information and what it would do to my job prospects. And he said, well, don't count on getting a job delivering mail. I was really put off by this, but later I found out that indeed the post office did have a pretty bad record for going after gay people. So, resuming my position back at the draft board, still wearing only my underwear, I fill out a questionnaire. Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? No. Do you have homosexual tendencies? Yes. After my questionnaire is processed, I go into a small windowless room dominated by gray metallic furniture, where the chair is cold on my thighs and back when I sit. I hand the person across the desk my letter from a psychologist. He has dark hair, pale skin, wears a white lab coat, and avoids eye contact. Name some homosexual bars in Chicago. Sherry's, the King's Ransom, Broadway Sam's. 4F, unfit for military service due to moral character. Get dressed and leave. I feel humiliated, like something's wrong with me, but I still want to serve my country. Well, despite my fears, I teach for another 9 years until I decide to go into a field that's more gay-friendly, accounting. And 49 years later, what does this whole thing mean for me? Well, I was curious and I decided to look up what is the origin of the term 4F. And come to find out that this came up during the Civil War when you had to reload quickly and you had to take canisters of gunpowder and use your teeth to open the canisters and dump the gunpowder into your rifle. And they decided that if you didn't have 4 front teeth, you couldn't serve in the military. Well, I'm proud that my 4F does not have to do with my overbite. Recently, I went to a new healthcare providers, and a young woman asked the typical questions. Any history of cancer in your family? What is your marital status? What is your wife's name? And I felt this uncomfortableness in the pit of my stomach because I don't want to be seen as different and I want people to like me. But I'm the same person that revealed himself to a lawyer and a psychologist and the draft board. So I take a deep breath and say, his name is Armand. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Oh, that was great. That was great. Wow, that piece of trivia about 4F. That's something. That's something. Thank you. All right.
Next.
I know who's next. I know. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Next up is an old, wonderful, dear friend, Yael, also known as Jamie Katz. Yael was there the night that Is This a Thing was born, but then she promptly moved to Austin, Texas before our first show. But she did just remind us that she came back for our 1-year anniversary, which is 6 years ago. So we've been waiting 6 years for Yael to come back to us. Yael gets paid to spend her daylight hours advising, writing, and speaking on food and agricultural policy. She writes her creative work when she's not pregnant and or given a deadline. She also loves a good joke, live music, good thing she's in Austin. She likes sports when they're actually happening. And of course, carbs, carbs, carbs. And what you can't tell from our little Zoom window is that Yael is expecting her first child pretty soon. Yael, welcome to Is This the Thing, Zoom style. Take it away when you are ready.
Thank you, Susie. That was really lovely introduction. Okay, I will get started. So since spring, I've been asked many times, is it hard to be pregnant while quarantined? Not really. I nap on the job, sometimes work from bed, eat and pee as I please, when I please, save when I have on Zoom, like tonight, or Chime. I don't have to wear torturous bras, for which there's no longer room on my body, or work appropriate clothes, or clothes. It's what my work team calls an adios pantalones situation, and I am very grateful. My last day working at the office was March 12th. Since then, it's been 12 sets of Mondays through Fridays spent in my home office, which doubles as our dining room. I will not likely see my office now until October when I return from maternity leave. It is sitting in this place that the size of my belly has grown, mostly unseen. The pregnancy has been very smooth sailing, and I probably owe more than a little bit of that to working from home. At the beginning of the pandemic, I felt a bit relieved that confinement meant my belly would not be the center of attention or frequent conversation. Sure, I enjoyed watching folks squirm in the elevator and hallways in the early part of my pregnancy, winter 2020, which was approximately 1,000 years ago now. Their eyes would dart to my belly, which appeared to be sticking out from my small frame. Is it too much holiday cheese and booze, which is a real possibility? Or is she working on a fetus in there? What's new? They'd ask sheepishly. Nothing, not a thing. You? I'd say, sticking out my belly a little bit farther, because it was killing them not to know. And thankfully at my liberal hippie company, they knew better than to ask. But at home, I've been mostly reluctant to answer the demand to see the increase in size, such as on work or family Zooms, unless it's one of my 90-plus-year-old aunts. I haven't comforted my colleagues expressing sadness. They aren't seeing me get bigger. Between my superstitious Jewish culture frowning on it and my distaste of watching folks open presents, I did not have, nor do I want, a baby shower. It has just been me and my partner marveling at all the changes, and it took me a couple months to let even him document that. Between October 2018 and October 2019, I got pregnant 3 times the old-fashioned way, which is not bad for a 41-year-old who had been told that even with fertility treatments, I'd have a really hard time. One of the many scars of miscarriage is the fear of being pregnant again. When a viable pregnancy does happen, your brain very rightly asks you to hold off on smiling just yet. After losing 2 in less than 8 months, I was protectively detached when we learned that a year after conceiving the first, a cluster of dividing cells had leased my uterus again. I was lucky, I'm very lucky, to have an extraordinary partner who could hold the excitement for us both in those early days. Even after I went public, I remained privately reserved. The nights leading up to a sonogram were always doleful and sleepless, because what if? What if we find ourselves weeping again in a dark exam room when they shut off the screen? I'm 34 weeks now and gigantic. Sonograms are a bit anticlimactic, and all I can identify is ribs and a brain, no matter what they tell me. Pro tip, don't ever ask to see the 3D spin of your baby's face. It will only terrify you, because initially they look like Smeagol from Lord of the Rings because they have no fat. And then later you'll be looking at their nose and asking, how are they already getting into bar brawls? As I get closer to go time and I stare more frequently at my body, surprisingly, I'm increasingly missing people watching and asking, specifically the unique way folks watch pregnant women. As the strange Groundhog Days of the pandemic shutdown blur into summer, I find I want even the unwelcome interferences, the lecture over drinking coffee, or the demand to know the due date or the gender, which if you don't find out will agitate strangers greatly. My partner's hairstylist, a proud trans woman, was aghast when he said that we wanted to wait to find out the gender. I'm missing out on swiping some bold lady's hand away from my belly or slowing my waddle so folks will let me cut a line. I'm not dumb enough to risk COVID by heading to a 25% full restaurant. Yes, Texas is open, just so I can let some blonde Southern version of a Yenta tell me I'm awful for drinking a beer during pregnancy. I would love nothing more than to smugly reply to her concern by taking a huge gulp. If I was still in the office, still moving about in public spaces, or even able to join a protest, I'd have a community, mostly women, some strangers, to witness this. This experience I have long imagined and also imagined never happening, to punctuate the surreality and heartbreak of this time in our history by confirming that, yes, this is real, this is happening, and each day brings the greater likelihood of a healthy baby born. Somehow, it has become June in the world and in Texas, and the heat is ratcheting up, meaning more confinement to my apartment, long hot solo walks now being a bit of a gamble. I sit in my bed, which looks out on our roof yard, a large deck with AstroTurf, another Texas thing. As inviting as it looks, the damn plastic grass like a hot sandy beach will make you regret not wearing flip-flops as soon as you step onto it. I alternate my gaze between the round swell of my abdomen, search for disturbances below my skin's surface, and the window, where I watch for squirrels and hummingbirds, delight at cardinals and sparrows, and wish the bullying doves and blue jays would scram. The sparrows only recently started coming to our feeder, and they're easy to miss. Small, mousy, they don't make it rock and tip like the others who try to alight on the flimsy metal bar. The feeder spins, and there is the sparrow. I blink, and it is gone. I look back and think maybe I can make out a tail hanging just there below the other side. But by the time the feeder spins around towards me, the bird is gone. I stare a little longer into the sun and notice that it has actually flown to one of our flower boxes. Leaning down, she feeds two fledglings whose beaks are visible just over the lip of the box. She doesn't know it, but I smile. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, that was amazing. I'm so excited for you. If you're wearing pants, stand up and show us your baby. Well,
I'm wearing a dress. But I'll send you a picture. It's March.
Yeah, I just was going to give you what you're missing. You said we're here. I'm happy to ogle anytime. That was awesome. We wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you.
And lots of AC. Very cool. Very cool. So good to be with you again. All right, you guys, somehow it has happened. We are up to our final storyteller. I do want to just say that Adios Pantalones is now something I'm just going to say. Well, and I guess now they're welcoming back. I went out and bought a pair of pants today, so I guess they're back. So, hola.
There's t-shirts out there. Some people on my team have them.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, no, it's been fun while it lasts. All right, next up is a wonderful presence in storytelling here in Chicago, and actually all over, because his voice has been heard wide and far on radio. Nestor the Boss Gomez. Nestor was born in Guatemala, and he came to Chicago undocumented in the mid-'80s. He told his first story at a Moth Story Slam to get over the stuttering that plagued his childhood. And since then, he has won over 40 Moth Slams. It's a huge deal, by the way. Nestor also created, and he hosts, produces, and curates his own storytelling show called 80 Minutes Around the World. It's a show that features the stories of immigrants and refugees from different parts of the world, their descendant and allies, in hopes to provide a better understanding of the realities, the struggles, and the dreams related to the immigrant experience. 80 Minutes Around the World is now available as a podcast. To listen and subscribe and to learn more about Nestor, you can visit his website, and I will put it in the chat, NestorGomezStoryteller.com. Nestor, welcome back to Is This a Thing? When you are ready.
Thank you. I hope I don't mess that up after that introduction. Wow. In the United States of America, Mother's Day is celebrated on the second Sunday of May. Unlike most of Latin American countries, where it's celebrated on the 10th of May. This year, the second Sunday of May was scheduled to land on May 10th, and I was excited at the prospect of everybody celebrating Mother's Day on the same day. But then the coronavirus hit the nation, and all kinds of celebrations and gatherings were put on pause. When the month of May came around, I, along a large segment of the population, had already spent weeks in isolation, unable to visit my mother, who is of advanced age. I couldn't see her, but at least I could call her. I cooked some food for you, I heard my mother say as soon as she answered the phone. I am an adult now, but my mother still cooks for me from time to time. My mom shows her affection with food, and I show my affection by eating her food. I wish I could come over to your house and pick it up, I told my mother over the phone. But the government advised that due to the probability of infection from the coronavirus, young people like me should stay away from old people like you. I heard my mother laugh as I say this. Community relief tends to be a survival mechanism for the communities most at risk. And since we are a low-income immigrant family, we often joke in the midst of our miseries and dilemmas. But not everything has been fun and games. There was a time when my parents emigrated to Chicago and left me and my siblings back in Guatemala in the care of family. My siblings and I spent years unable to see, kiss, or hug our mom. Those years were not fun at all. It has been years since something like that tear our family away. But recently, the coronavirus has managed to do similar damage. If you can't come over, I'll drive to your house then, and I'll leave the food by your door, I heard my mom say. She hung up before I could argue that I didn't want her to take the risk of getting sick. A while later, I see a car pulling by. My mom is carrying a large plastic bag full of Tupperware. She drops the bag by my door and steps back as I open the door. I see my mom smiling. At least, I think she's smiling. I can't see her smile because of the mask she's wearing, but I can see her eyes. And I think that she is smiling despite the small tears that I see running down her face. I want to hug her so badly, but I know I shouldn't, so I don't. I remember the last time I felt this desperation to hug my mom. We had just arrived in Chicago, and we were about to be reunited with her. It was the first week of March, but to us, it felt like an early Mother's Day. My siblings and I stood in the hallway as she opened the door to her apartment. As soon as we saw her, my older sister, me, and our middle brother ran up to her and clung to her body. Our 5-year-old baby brother stood to the side, unsure of what to do. I'm hungry, he said a few minutes later. Here, my mom responded and gave him some cookies. Gracias, señora, my baby brother responded. Don't call me señora, I'm your mom, my mother responded, hugging him. He had to say, thanks, lady, to our mom, because he didn't recognize her anymore. I understood my baby brother then. We have been away from our mom for years, so much that it took a while for all of us to feel like a family again. Today, my mom is wearing a mask, but I recognize her. She is no longer the young woman that immigrated to the USA, nor the strange lady my baby brother saw the day we were reunited. She has spent decades working her ass off to provide for my siblings and I, and it shows. I cooked some of your favorite food, my mom says, keeping at least 6 feet away from me. It's nice to see you, but I wish I could hug you, I tell my mom, holding back tears. I wish I could hug you too, she replies. She gets a little bit closer to me. She extends her elbow. I do the same. We bump elbows as part of this strange COVID-19 greeting that we all have been forced to adopt. After that, my mom gets in her car. And suddenly I remember how I felt when she left Guatemala and we stayed behind. I remember the incertitude of those days. We didn't know if we would ever be together again. And sadly, this virus has brought that familiar uncertainty back into our lives. Make sure to eat all the food, she says, waving at me. Thanks, but I wish that we could have these meals together, I reply. We will be together soon, my mother says. This is only for a little while. I hear my mom say that, and I swear that I can remember her saying the same thing to me days before she left Guatemala. It took a while then, but in the end, we managed to be reunited. I want to think that it will be the same way this time around. That we might not be able to celebrate Mother's Day this year, but our sacrifice now will ensure that we will get to celebrate many times in the following years. And once this epidemic is finally over, I'm going to run to my mother and all my loved ones, and I'm going to give them the biggest and longest hug ever. Thank you.
Excellent, Nestor. Okay, you and I, we have the same thing on our minds tonight. We need to, we very much want to hug our mothers. I think I want to hug your mother too, Nestor. I want to thank our storytellers, Danny, Shanna, Patrick, Yael, and Nestor. And I want to ask everybody out there, please feel free to unmute yourselves and let's let them hear our love. So everybody unmute, and to our storytellers. Okay, or you can just show us if you want to unmute. You guys were great. Great. So proud to be with you tonight and for you to be in our lineup. Thank you. And we want to thank everybody out there who joined us, who support us in our show when we used to meet at O'Shaughnessy's, and then especially out here in Zoom land. We hope that we will be back sooner than later, but only time will tell that. I keep wondering if we could take over their patio in front and just shout our stories. But until then, I did put some links into the chat, and you'll have time to copy and paste if any of them are things that you'd like to explore. We'll put some information up on our Facebook page as well. There's no shortage of resources out there for all of us, and we certainly encourage the conversation to continue. If anyone out there is interested in being part of our show, that's all you have to do is let us know and you will be part of the show. It's that easy. So please get in touch with me or Damien or Jake or somebody you've seen in the show, and your name will get to us and we will make it happen. So another round of applause for our storytellers, for Damien, for Jake. Thank you, Damien, for keeping this thing going. At least it looks like it's going. So stay safe and healthy, and can't wait to see you guys. So be well and good luck. Yeah, Elle, we can't wait to hear the good news. Good night, everybody.
Yay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.